All right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. My name is Angelo from AVAC, and we are delighted to welcome you to this info session to talk about the 2022 AVAC Fellows program applications. And to start off, we're going to have my colleague and friend, Manju Chetani Gada, to take us away. Manju.
Thank you, Angelo. And hi, everyone, and welcome to our first info session for the 2022 AVAC Advocacy Fellows program. My name is Manju Chetani Gada. I'm the Director of Partnerships and Capacity Strengthening at AVAC and have helped lead this program for over 11 years now. We're very, very proud of where we are right now with the program, in taking it through a decade, and are delighted to launch the call for new applications for the next year and walk into the next decade for the program. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the agenda, what you're going to hear on this call. I'm going to tell you a little bit about who AVAC is, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about the program. And after that, my colleague Angelo will go through some of the frequently asked questions for the program, and we will hear from some alumni fellows who are on the call and some current fellows who are on the call. And we even have a previous host supervisor who can tell you about their experience. And finally, you will all have a chance to ask questions. Throughout this, the discussion, I just want you to remember that this is we will only one updated all our materials related to the program. And so our information packet, the application document, frequently asked questions for host supervisors, and a whole bunch more are really excellent resources for you. And if you are seriously considering applying for this program, I would recommend you spend some time reviewing all of those materials. So because we're expecting a lot of people on the call today, we're not going to do introductions to everyone, but every time one of our AVAC team is on, you will definitely know they're part of the Fellows team over here. So first of all, let's start with who's AVAC. AVAC is an organization which is 20, and we focus on advocacy and support for research to roll out of HIV prevention products. We use education, policy analysis, advocacy, community mobilization, and work closely with the network of civil society and other collaborators to accelerate ethical development and global delivery of biomedical HIV prevention options. So when you think of AVAC, depending on where you stand, you may think of different things. You may think of our work in country, working alongside other implementing partners, ministries of health, advocates, civil society groups, to really support the introduction of new tools. You may see us as part of civil society coalitions, advocating for high impact prevention, advocating for more resources, pushing donors to really address community needs. You may see us influencing the research process and making sure that advocates have a voice in the research process. And finally, you may see us doing several programs to support advocates in their communities and countries to be able to make the change they want to see. And one example of that, and one of AVAC's flagship programs, is the Advocacy Fellows program. Next slide. So a little bit about the Advocacy Fellows program. As I said, we are now accepting applications for our 12th year of the program. Now, the ethos of this program is that programs and research that is fundamentally grounded in the priorities of people who need prevention most is the most effective, will actually reach the people who need it. Passionate community advocates and champions really are the heart of this process at the community level. They explain the science, they define priorities, and they hold stakeholders accountable to influence HIV prevention and its access. So the Fellows Program really looks at this goal, and it fosters a network of confident, informed advocates, helps them expand their skill set for advocacy regionally and globally. Their voices accelerate ethical research and equitable access. Next slide. So over the 12 years of the program, we have 77 fellows, and we've collaborated with 67 host organizations in 14 countries. Each year, we have usually between 6 and 9. Can we ask everyone to mute their lines, please? I can still hear some background noise. Thank you. So we have 77 fellows and 67 organizations in 14 countries that we have supported fellowship programs. Each year we have between 6 to 9 fellows that we bring into the program. Most of our focus has been on East and Southern Africa, although we have a strong alumni showing in Nigeria. And we've had 1 fellow from India and 1 fellow from China. You can see on the left-hand side of the screen our current AVAC fellows who are very, very proud of, who've had an incredible year and a half, and we're sad that their year ends at the end of this month. Next slide. And this is the final slide I'm going to be talking about before I hand over to my colleague. So I just talked a little bit about the goal of the Advocacy Fellows program, which is really to strengthen the capacity of civil society advocates to monitor and help shape the global response to HIV prevention research. Every year, the real focus is on biomedical HIV prevention. This year is no exception. The focus of the program is biomedical HIV prevention. However, we are very interested this year in getting proposals that really make strong linkages to structural issues, social and behavioral considerations. And as well, we will entertain some ideas which look at the linkages between HIV and other linked epidemics such as TB and of course, COVID-19. And if there are prevention issues the applicant is interested in, then that can be captured here. Before I hand over, I also want to let you know that on our website, we have a couple of fantastic videos. Last year, we completed an independent evaluation of the program, and we heard from a lot of advocates and used that to update part of our program. So I really encourage you to look at the videos and again, read all the documents. And I want to pay special attention to 3 different things. First, we have some new documents that we developed specially to help applicants. One of them is tips to approach host organizations. Again, can I ask people to mute their lines? Thank you. Tips to approach host organizations.
Oh.
Manju, sorry to interrupt. We're no longer able to hear you.
I'm sorry, can you hear me now, Hannah?
Yes, thank you, yes.
I'm not sure what happened. I didn't touch anything on my screen, but I'm right at the end. just talked about some new documents to pay attention to. One is tips to approach host supervisors. We heard that it's very difficult to approach organizations. So please look at this very brief tool that can help you. Second is a very brief description of the program, two-pager, which you can also use when you're approaching host organizations. The next thing I want to alert you to is that this is an 18-month fellowship. Every year we offer a year-long fellowship, but we have changed the program and we're offering it for 1.5 years. And the final thing is that even though we're very excited to support initiatives across Africa, we are focusing for this year on Eastern and Southern Africa for the program. If you are interested from Nigeria, we do have a strong alumni family in Nigeria. And so you could apply, but you need to have an extremely compelling application because this year's focus, we are prioritizing East and Southern Africa. And so with that, I'm sure you're going to have a lot more questions. A lot of them are already answered in the program. And so Angelo is going to run you through a few of those frequently asked questions. Good luck to everybody who's applying. We are excited to see your applications. Be creative, be bold, and be very observant of all the instructions because every year we get between 100 to 200 applications. So your application has to shine. So good luck to everyone who is considering joining.
Great. Thank you so much, Manji, for that. And welcome, everyone. I'm also part of the Fellows team, and we'll be happy to take you through the next segment of today's conversation. So continuing with the frequently asked questions, this is one that keeps coming up. What does the Fellows program provide anyway? Why should I care to be part of this program? When you're part of the program, you get your knowledge built. We provide technical support on any number of issues that fellows focus on in their countries. We provide mentorship and advocacy development, and not just for the fellow, but also for the fellows host organization and the fellows network. And we'll be hearing a bit more about that from current fellows and alumni later. Also has a very large network of partners in the research sector, in the advocacy space, in the activism space, with donors, with funders and developers of products. So when you join this program, your network is also opened up to those networks that AVAC is part of. Not just for advocates, but all of the other key stakeholders that we are a part of. We also provide financial support for project implementation. The fellow gets a specific budget for execution of activities, in addition, obviously, to getting a full-time salary for the project year that they are fellows. In addition to that, the host organization also gets an overhead, and this is it has been 15% of the entire budget. So you put the fellows' salary together, add the project budget, 15% of that has been going to the host organization. And this year, because of the evaluation that you had Manju speaking about, we have actually increased that to be at 25%, 10% of which will be going strictly to supervision support. So in the past, we haven't explicitly provided any direct support for supervision of the host organization. Going forward, we'll be giving an additional 10% of the entire grant for supervision support to the host organization. And obviously, there's also the increased skill set. And these skills went from communications to project management to research literacy, advocacy and convening, stakeholder management, and so many other skills that fellows get as part of being in the program. So who can apply to be a fellow?
Angelo, I'm so sorry to interrupt you, but a number of folks are reaching out saying they're unable to hear you clearly.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, but it is very, very muffled.
Is that better?
That's
Maybe
better, yes. Thank you. I
my
appreciate it.
mic.
Thank you so much. Sorry to interrupt you. Thank you.
No problem. So who can apply to be a fellow? Fellows are mid-career, emerging or mid-career community leaders and advocates. And you have to be interested in strengthening your advocacy skills and also advocating for HIV prevention. We also, as you heard from Manju, in the next round, are opening up applications for people interested in working on COVID specific advocacy and TB advocacy as well. So in addition to that, what we have been doing, really having people focus on the research itself to develop new interventions, and then the rollout of those interventions and the introduction of those interventions. We are also going to be accepting projects focusing on TB and COVID-19 because we have to be responsive to the times we're living in. COVID has impacted every one of us in ways that, all of us can spend a whole year describing. So we want to be responsive to that. There are also individuals based in low and middle income countries with high HIV burdens and where we have either ongoing biomedical HIV research or planned introduction of newly developed interventions. Applicants have to be proficient in English. We would love to expand this to other languages, but the mentors that are available are only proficient in English, and we can only support you if we can be able to communicate effectively with you. So that's a limitation of the program. So we'll only be taking people who are able to communicate in English. And then they have to be able to demonstrate an awareness of ongoing HIV and COVID prevention in their respective countries and regions. That is an important one. Oh, they must be willing to learn more. So if you are one of those people, you're more than welcome to apply to be a fellow. We have a bunch of other frequently asked questions. What projects can a fellow propose? Manju alluded to a very important document. If you choose one document to read, and I hope you don't choose just one, but if you did, the application information packet is what you want to spend a lot of your time on. We have a lot of other resources and we encourage you to read them. But all of the questions we're going over today and potentially others that will be asked will be in that document and they'll be answered, including the ones, what projects are not eligible. For example, if you want to do research, for example, if you want to do, research is your project, this is not a research project program, it's a research advocacy program. If you want to do a project to complete your master's degree, this is not the program for you. If you are an executive director who is already seasoned and you run your organization or have run organizations in the past, and you are already, again, as we said, it's for emerging and mid-career advocates. If you are already at the top of your organization, this is not for you, but you might consider being a host to a potential fellow. This is a very important one, the third question on the slide. Do I have to know everything I'm going to work on to before I apply? And the answer is you don't necessarily need to, to give us a fully baked project idea, but you should have some sense of what where you want to go, and we can help you then build on it. But you don't have to have a fully baked idea for you to be considered. Other frequently asked questions, what's the role of the host organization? So we have what we call a tripartite relationship with the fellow. If you looked at a triangle with the fellow at the top, and at the base of that triangle, you have the host organization and you have AVAC. So that's the role of the host is to provide the support that the fellow needs to be able to execute their project. So anything ranging from being the physical home of the fellow, where the fellow will be sitting to do his or her project or their project. The host organization also provide the fiscal. So any financial stuff, they will be giving, providing your salary. They will be providing you what all of the host organization's financial policies apply to the fellow, because for that fellowship period, the fellow is considered an employee of the host organization. So that's a very critical part of what you get from the host. And of course, the supervision. The supervisor is a staff member of the host organization, and that supervision is needed because, again, AVAC is based in New York. We rely on host organizations and the partners to provide the support that fellows need to execute their projects. What types of groups can be host organizations? Again, I refer to the information packet that I just mentioned previously. Pages 9 to 11 provide a detailed explanation of what kind of groups can be host organizations, but we have established non-government organizations, civil society groups, faith-based organizations, community organizations, all eligible to be host organizations. I just talked about the role of the host supervisor. They provide ongoing guidance on a regular basis to the fellow. How are advocacy fellows and organizations paid? Earlier, I talked about a project budget and also salary for the fellow and the overhead. These funds come from AVAC once a grant agreement has been reached, rather developed. The funds go to the host organization, and the fellow's salary is paid on a monthly basis at the same time that other employees at the organization receive their funding, their salaries. In addition to this, so for the project execution, the fellow goes through the regular host organization procurement processes, so that if you're going to have a meeting, you will request, submit a requisition like any other staff would to be able to get funding from the host organization to do your activities. So what about applicants who haven't found a host when they apply? So priority will be given to applicants who have identified hosts. You're welcome to apply if you don't have a host, and you can, show us some kind of proof that you have tried and have simply failed. This year, we have actually done what we think is a beautiful thing, and have identified, have put a list of our former host organizations on the website. So when you go to the 2022 application page, you will find host organizations in your country. If we've had fellows in your country, you will find that list there. And that's a great place to start. We don't limit applicants to only organizations we've worked with, but that's a good place to start. So it will give you a sense of what kind of groups have been accepted in my country or even in other countries, and can I reach similar groups, or can I even reach out to the same groups to consider them as hosts? I think we have a lot of other questions. I think I again go to the application information packet. We also have a specific FAQ for host organizations, which I encourage both fellows and potential hosts, potential fellows and potential hosts to take a look at, because it provides very, very useful information. And then the last slide I will go over is the timeline. I won't go through every one of them, but the two critical ones. So we opened the applications on August 31st. We are closing applications, receiving applications on October 12th. is the deadline. So in about a month, we will be closing receiving applications. Get your application in before that deadline, and we will be delighted to receive it and review it, and or hopefully you will be selected as one of the 2022 fellows. And with that, that's the last slide of from here.
I didn't get that. Could you try again?
So that's the last slide, and we will be moving on actually to the next part of the agenda, which is to talk to some of our fellows, alumni, and supervisors about their experiences. And I will start this, and we'll get to your questions later. But so to start with, I want to hear from a current fellow about, in fact, Mandi, I think Mandisa from South Africa is on the line. Mandi, can you tell us how you approached your application writing? And where, how did you approach your actual writing of your application? And why do you think you were selected, you were successfully selected as a fellow? Mandi, can you unmute yourself? And as Mandi gets her microphone sorted, I know we have a number of other current fellows on the line. Can you, anyone actually now, Mandi is-
I think we have Winnie on the line actually, if we could invite Winnie to answer the question. And introduce yourself, please, Winnie.
Winnie?
You'll note that everyone has been automatically muted. So you will need to unmute yourself if you're going to make a contribution. So Winnie and Mandisa, if you are there, please do unmute yourself so you can share.
Yeah, and as we get Winnie, the next question is going to be to you, Alice Kayongo. If you can prepare to get yourself off mute. But in the meantime, either Winnie or Mandi, how did you approach your writing, and why do you think you got selected as a fellow? Mandi?
Hello. Thank you, Angelo. Hi.
Sorry, Mandi, sorry.
Yeah, Mandi, go ahead.
Mandisa, please go ahead and then we can hear from Winnie afterwards.
All right, looks like we lost Mandi again. Winnie, can you answer the question then?
Okay, hi Angelo, hi Hannah. Sorry, I think I had a technical glitch.
Yeah, go ahead.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you, yes.
Okay, so about the fellowship project, I think I had to look at the previous programs, and also I had to do research prior to the application to understand the most pertinent advocacy issue. Of course, it's not always easy, so you have to prepare earlier enough such that you are well versed with what is happening in your country. And then I think the other thing that helped me to be successful was one, being confident that the issue really existed and taking time to understand the questions that are in the application document. Usually the document looks big, but you don't have to be scared because it's really interactive. You just have to answer the questions well, and you should be grounded with facts in your country of the advocacy issue you want to push for. But also I would advise that you read, there are a lot of resources on the AVAC website, including the AVAC usually prepares reports with key issues. So I would advise prospective fellows to take time to read the application materials, understand the questions, and also look at the focus areas. Look at what AVAC does, you know.
Right.
Yes, I don't know if I've answered well.
Yes, you've answered the first part. So why do you think you were selected?
Sorry, Angelo?
Why do you think you were selected as a fellow?
I think because one, I demonstrated so well in the application process, but I think because the issue that I picked on really needed to be addressed in my country. And I think the qualities that I possess, being passionate about HIV advocacy, being passionate about transforming community, being passionate about creating impact, and of course, having some experience in advocacy and being able to demonstrate to the team that I've really been doing something in regards to HIV prevention research. I think that's why I was able to be successful.
Great, great. Thanks so much for that, Winnie. And if you want to know more about Winnie's project, you can go to the Fellows website page on our website to read more. Alice, can you tell us what you focused on as a fellow and what impact it had on your country and community?
Hello, Angelo, and good afternoon to you all. So what I focused on as a fellow in 2012, I focused on treatment as prevention. At that time, that is when we had just received information results from HPTN 0525, I forget. 052. But we had just, sorry, say that again?
HPTN 052.
HPTN 052, yes. We had just received results that treatment can also be used as a prevention tool. And at that time, not many countries had actually even rolled out treatment guidelines. And, treatment was only reserved for only those who were at CD4 count 250 and below. So with these results that had been released from the study, the HPTN 052, we had the evidence with us that we were able to use in Uganda to influence the Ministry of Health to be able to take on the recommendations and also to be able to ensure that treatment is being used as a prevention tool for HIV and AIDS. But my fellowship was kind of 2 to 3 pronged. The second part of it was with influencing PEPFAR and PEPFAR processes in country. I must say that I was the very first fellow to start on influencing PEPFAR processes. And so my fellowship helped me get in touch with different decision makers, more so PEPFAR at the country level, but even then with the Ministry of Health, because PEPFAR doesn't work, independently. They work in collaboration with the Ministry of Health. And so that is what I was able to do. And how that has helped me is that I must be honest with you, it did open my career doors. I mean, because of the fellowship that I did, and I keep saying that a lot of the work that I do today is in large part attributed to the fellowship that I did with AVAC. And so the skills that I got, the passion. I mean, yes, I did have passion right from the start, but when you work with a team that you feel is like, even much more passionate than you are, there's a way in which it becomes so contagious that you also, jump on you move along. And so, yeah, I can really attribute all that to the fellowship that I did with AVAC. Thank you, Angelo.
That's a great response, Alice. And you can see, I mean, Alice was a fellow in 2012, and the work that she did opening up the PEPFAR space to civil society is now the model for how PEPFAR as a funder operates, globally in deciding or in engaging civil society and deciding where funding goes and how it's spent. Now, the final question it's to Chilufya in Zambia. Chilufya, can you tell us what you had many accomplishments. Can you tell us one of them and how you have sustained it since you completed your fellowship? What was one of your accomplishments and how have you sustained it after your fellowship?
Thank you, Angelo. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Chilufya Hampongo. I work for Treatment Advocacy and Redress Campaign in Lusaka, Zambia. As Angelo has already mentioned, I'm an alumni. I come from the class of 2016 fellows. So my fellowship project was based on having PrEP in country and later be adopted into the HIV prevention and treatment guidelines. So when upon completion of my fellowship here, my work just started. I should mention that when you are applying, the feeling is that after 12 months, with regards to the new fellows that will come the next class, obviously they'll be looking at 1 year, 8 months. You might obviously think it's after those months you're done. But for me, that was the beginning of all the work. So after having completed my fellowship here, my greatest achievement was having PrEP adopted by the Zambian government under Ministry of Health in the treatment and prevention guidelines. And from that time on, there's been collaboration with CSOs on how to ensure that PrEP becomes a reality in Zambia. And also, I should mention, it has helped me to open many other doors when it comes to advocacy for making sure prevention doesn't just end at having options that are shelved, but they should be rolled out to the communities to meet the needs of the people who need them the most. Angelo, have I answered the question? Thank you.
Yes, you have. Thank you so much for that, Chilufya. And to learn more about all of this from the different alumni and even current fellows, you go to the fellows page on our website, you'll find it there. And with that, I'm going to hand over to my colleague, Hannah, to take us through the next session for today. Hannah?
Hi, folks. It's great to be here with you. My name is Hannah, and I also work with the Fellows Program. We're going to use the majority of the rest of our time here today. We've got about 15 minutes, but if folks are able to stay on the line, we might go a few minutes over to do a question and answer portion. So we know there's already been a couple of questions that have come in through the chat. We can start with those. Please use the hand raising function, which you can find at the bottom of your Zoom screen so that we can make sure to have everyone on cue to respond. I'll be inviting the fellows team to take these questions and also the current fellows and some of our alumni hosts and alumni fellows to also respond to your queries. In addition to the folks that have already spoken, we also have alumni Tondo, Shakira, Lefiana, I believe Sylvia is on the line. So I do invite those folks to chime in and share their experience and respond to any questions when they feel called to do so. So I think we'll start with a couple of questions that have already come in the chat. Again, please feel free to put your question in the chat or raise your hand. I'm going to direct this question to Angelo. The two questions, they both refer to budgets. First is there a budget ceiling for the proposed project? And the second is, when approaching a host organization, is there a salary range that they need to quote? Thanks, Angelo.
Great, two great questions. So we have the project budget is $8,500 or thereabouts. That's the project itself. And some of you may say, oh, that's, it's not enough money. And, But we have, in the 12 years of the program, had only a handful of fellows who have been able to use the entire amount, because part of what we do in the program is to help show fellows and other advocates, how can you leverage, how can you make the most of the resources you have. So that's the amount. So that was when the fellowship was 1 year. The fellowship, this past class has been 18 months, and we increased that by another half of that. So it was about $15,000. And it will be about the same for this coming cadre of fellows, because it's also going to be 18 months. So that's the first question. And then the second one is about, can you ask the second question again? About hosts?
Sure. So is there a salary range that you should come to your host organization with? How do you negotiate?
Yes, another great question. We don't have a fixed salary for every fellow. So depending on your country, depending on your host organization that you choose, and what the salary ranges are for employees in that organization, we will work with the fellow, the host organization, and AVAC to determine that salary. But we look at equity across the organization. We look at equity within the cadre of fellows, and we also are very transparent in determining those salaries. So if, for example, you come in at a project officer level in an organization in Zimbabwe, we will look at how much project officers in that organization earn. We will also look at what you have been earning as a person from your previous organization. If you are not earning, we will also consider that. So we don't come up with the numbers. The organization you choose and the country where you're best help us to determine that. And then we look at the entire class of fellows, so that we don't have people earning significantly more than others or significantly less than everybody in that particular class. Thanks, Hannah.
Thank you so much, Angelo. The next couple questions I think I'll direct to Manju, and they're about eligibility. So we have a couple different questions about it, but to summarize, we have some folks that are professors, and we also have students, and they're interested in knowing if they're currently involved in academia, if they're eligible to apply in programs, if they're in academia programs.
Thanks, Hannah. Can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly.
Great. So, we only offer 6 to 8 fellowships. So of course, we are looking at people who are really interested in advocacy, who are really committed to making a change through advocacy in their communities. There are many ways to make change. Teaching is one of them, research is another, but this isn't the program for that. It's a very demanding program, and I'd love, I'm going to call on one of the alumni to actually talk about how demanding it is and why it's hard to do 2 things at once. So let me just say, there are people who have been in academia, they've been in school, or are pursuing degrees at the same time, but they do it as part-time because the intensity of the fellows program is really important. We do not permit 2 jobs though, because we think that 100% fellowship is very hard to do alongside another job. And that is from years and years of experience of people trying to do 2 things at once. So we don't permit 2 jobs. If you are in in already an academic degree, if you are able to manage your schedule so it doesn't impact, then that's a consideration. But for those also who are in academia, who are interested, please note that you can't use the fellowship project or experience as your research or your thesis for your academic project. This really is focused on making change. So I hope I answered your question. There's more information in the application document, but Ntando, I wonder if you want to say anything about the intensity of working on a program and trying to have other responsibilities at work at the same time.
Yes, Manju, I'm happy to share really about the intensity and how intense the program is. Even if I might not remember because it was in 2013, but I still have an idea really of how the 12 months was really not necessarily enough, which I think is the reason why there was a consideration for the program to really be extended to more years. So it really is demanding, depending on who you wanting to influence as part of your fellowship. So these are really, really, serious considerations that make it completely impossible to really have a job. And in fact, it's almost even impossible to have your other life. So that's a real consideration in order to really achieve what you set out to achieve in the program. It is really great to be very focused and to really be disciplined in terms of how you manage the time, because there is quite a lot of moving things as part of the program.
Great, thank you so much. I'm getting a lot of questions here, both on our chat and then private message to me about eligibility. And I really encourage folks to please look at our info packet, as both Angelo and Manju have mentioned about eligibility. A number of folks have sent me the names of the community organizations that they work for and things they're interested in. And again, yes, if you are a community advocate, emerging mid-career, you're certainly eligible to apply. So please do refer to that document because I have about 9 or 10 folks asking me about their eligibility now. Are there any other questions? Thank you, Manju, for posting the page numbers about eligibility specifically. Thank you. Any other questions that folks might have? Any additional comments from hosts or alumni fellows, current fellows on the line? Words of wisdom or advice to those that are interested in applying this year?
Hey, Hannah, can I ask a direct question to Sylvia? She's a former host, so a former fellow, so has 2 hats. So Sylvia, like, what does it entail to supervise a fellow? Like, is it a walk in the park? Like, tell us about that experience and what potential supervisors can expect from that role.
Thank you, Angelo. Having been a fellow and then later a supervisor, I think as a supervisor, you need to appreciate the project that is being done by the fellow. You need to understand the advocacy that the fellow is doing, because if you're not conversant of the issues at hand, it's hard to give guidance to the fellow. But also as a supervisor, you should be knowledgeable of the policy landscape. You should be knowledgeable of the policy makers so that you can guide the fellow where to knock, which doors to knock to, but also you should be open to learning, because as the fellowship is moving on, there's a lot of learning, especially in the area where the advocacy is happening. As you look at the different projects that previous fellows have done, there are different areas, there are different unique areas. So it's good to be open-minded and open to learning new research, but also open to give guidance in terms of engaging, but also as you move with the fellows, the AVAC team is there to guide. They open doors to international connections, to in-country connections, and these are windows for you to work with a fellow with. And as a supervisor, I think you need to be together with a fellow, because if you leave the fellow to move alone, then you lose your ability to supervise, to guide, and you find that the fellow indirectly will turn into your supervisor, not really your supervisor, but an expert on an area than you should. So need to be mindful of that.
So Sylvia, so that seems like a lot of work for the supervisor. So of what benefit is the fellowship to the host organization and potentially to the supervisor?
I think to the supervisor, obviously it opens linkages and networking opportunities to other fields, especially in line with the advocacy, but also as a host supervisor, this is an opportunity for you to shine. As the fellow is shining, you're shining alongside. And then also as a host organization, there's some funding that comes to your organization in terms of administration costs. And this funding supports the organization, but also at the fellowship. This is not the end. If the issue is still there in the country, is still an issue to be advocated for, you have an opportunity to write other applications to AVAC. And
Sylvia, I think we may have lost you there mid-thought, but thank you so very much for sharing. I see Mandisa, who is one of our current fellows, has raised her hand to share. So I'll invite her to do so in a moment. Are folks able to hear me? Hello?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. We have one question in the chat from Helena. What will happen after my fellowship ended? So I can just briefly respond to that before I invite Mandisa to speak. So of course, there is, and we're working on this right now with our current fellows who will be graduating at the end of September. Throughout these 18 months, as has been shared, we do, it's very intensive work with your mentors. We provide financial resources, and it can be a bit scary to think about graduating after those 18 months. We're actually in the process right now of improving and iterating that sort of post-fellowship transition period. Some of the things that that we're currently doing and we plan to do with the next cohort of fellows is work on post-fellowship transition plans. So really talk to you about what your goals are after the fellowship, how it can be of help in terms of assisting with resumes or facilitating strategic linkages in your country with folks working on things that you're interested in. So there's a number of things that we do as we prepare for that time. And actually maybe Mandisa, since you're about to share, you could talk a little bit about what that process is like for you right now as you're preparing to graduate. Mandisa?
Hi, Anna, thank you so much. Can you hear me?
Perfectly.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Anna. I wanted to contribute, and I'm sure it's gonna touch on the previous question. Also, I think the speaker before you, Hannah, mentioned something that is very important of when you are choosing a host organization. It's very important if you have an opportunity to input on who you would want your supervisor to be. Make sure that you identify someone who is a little bit knowledgeable about your project so that you can get the relevant support from the person. And again, as the supervisor spoke, as you are signing as a fellow, obviously your supervisor will definitely shine, especially if it's aligned to her focus area. And secondly, as you are choosing your host, it's very, very important that you choose a host organization that is aligned also as a host now, as an organization, to your focus area so that they can be in a position to see you fit in to their structure and somehow not be in a position to lose you post-fellowship because they will be able to align their purpose, their focus, and as you are doing your work, it's definitely going to be something that as a host, they will also be reporting on to their funders, which in a way may leverage more resources for them that will make them be in a position to create a space for you beyond or after the fellowship. So I wanted to highlight on that, because when they see the value that you have put into their organization over the 18 months, definitely they will see the value, the valuable person that you are in the organization, and chances are they may create a position for you. But then it's not mandated, of course, because even just quoting you as a fellow is a bonus, but then it's a cherry on top of the cherry on top when they decide to absorb you as an organization. I just wanted to mention those few things.
Thank you so much, Mandisa. That's so helpful. So as Angela wrote in the chat, we started a little bit late. And so for folks that are able to stay on another 10 minutes, we'll extend our time. If you're unable to and still have some questions, you can reach out to fellows@avac.org. I've put it in the chat. 2 questions have just come to me over direct message. So one is, on the question of advocacy experience, does it count if I've done work on social media about awareness raising? Can I share my social media accounts as evidence of my work? I think Manju, I'll hand that one to you.
Sure, and thank you for that question. So we are definitely looking for people who have some sense of what advocacy is. And the truth is, most of us have had some advocacy experience in our life. I mean, if you think of a time that you, when you were in school, tried to change a system or a process, many of you who are leaders have been through exactly that process. Think of a time in your community when you were younger or now that you and other students or other young people organized together because there was some process in your community that you were fighting against. Those are the kinds of people who are attracted to this program and who have something to really offer. So you're not expected to be a full-fledged advocate, but have some understanding of what it means to want to make change. I will say that people who have a lot of experience with advocacy are also welcome, but we are looking for those who haven't had the opportunity to grow their skills. We are looking for people who want to grow their advocacy skills. So if you're the director of a program and you do lots of training for advocacy, this is probably not for you. You're probably too qualified for a program like this. For example, if you're a treatment activist and you have great experience doing treatment activism or in human rights activism, or, you know, for LGBTQ, maybe you're anti-homophobia advocate, but you're interested in building your skills in HIV prevention, then this program could be for you. So some experience in advocacy is very, very welcome, but you don't need to be a global leading advocate. We're going to get you there, though, if you get through the program. So that was one question. And the second question you asked me, Hannah?
And the second question is, which I actually didn't raise, but I will also hand to you because I think it goes well. I'm trying to recap it. Basically, could you just share a little more, Manju, about why the focus is Eastern and Southern Africa for folks that are from other places that are interested in applying?
Absolutely. So every year we open the applications far and wide. And as you can imagine, we get very interesting applications from across the world. But the experience we have so far and the advice we got from the evaluation we ran is that it's really hard to support an alumni in a country with very few support systems, or where AVAC is not known. And so our decision was, before going into other regions in South America or Southeast Asia, not that they don't have a need, it's important for us to build our mapping over there, make sure we have partner organizations before we are ready to support a fellow there. So in terms of other regions, we want to do it a lot more intentionally. And what we will be doing, as I told you, we're entering into a new era of the program. So what we will be doing is taking a region at a time, going forward, and really focusing on building our network there and then opening it up for the fellowship. Now, for other African countries, people who are based in West Africa or Central Africa, I know this is a concerning issue that you see because we have been open. I'll start with countries in Central Africa and some in West Africa. We don't have very strong networks there. And so that's another reason we don't want to encourage fellowships, because we really can't support you on the ground. And those are also places we will be going in a stepwise way. The one exception is Nigeria. We've accepted applications from Nigeria before. We have a strong alumni there. So we are interested in a couple more, but we have to put a focus somewhere. And so for this year, we really want to focus on broadening our reach in Eastern and Southern Africa. We're especially looking for countries in Eastern and Southern Africa that haven't been represented enough, because we know we're going to get strong applications from the rest of Eastern and Southern Africa. So it may not be the answer you want if you're from a different country, but this is how we can ensure that everyone who comes into the program gets the same amount of support that others do.
Thank you so much, Manju. And I'm just going to have one more question, and then I'll turn it over to Angelo to wrap us up. Angelo or Manju, either of you could answer this. I've gotten a couple questions about host organizations, if academic institutions or governments are potential host organizations. Manju, maybe I'll give this to you since Angelo is going to close us out. So
Sure.
The question again is, can we have work with governments or academic institutions as their hosts?
So working with governments is an interesting one. Usually governments are the target of our focus when we do advocacy. We are advocating to government to change policies, to change processes, to move faster, to be a watchdog to them. So in the past, we have not offered government organizations as hosts, primarily because our experience of most advocacies, you need to be on the outside to really push them in ways, and that inside, especially if you're not a senior position, it's very hard to push it. Having said that, we expect advocates to work closely with government organizations. The other issue here is that it's difficult for an NGO to give money to a host organization to run, who is a government organization to run an advocacy project. So we haven't done that in the past. There have been some queries about this. For us to change our policy, it has to be an extremely compelling reason, I will tell you that, because our precedent is we do not accept that. Now, academic organizations is a little more interesting. I think it would be on a case-by-case basis. We definitely have accepted research organizations that also do training of new researchers. You know, in a sense, they fulfill some academic purposes. The question we would ask is this the right host to support an emerging advocate to do advocacy work on the ground? Being hosted by an academic organization, will your focus not all be on building your academic career and moving on to your next academic status rather than supporting advocacy efforts on the ground? However, again, if you make a really compelling case for it, we will look at it. It is not out of the question. Hope that is useful.
Thank you so much, Manju. And again, we are going to wrap up now. I'll turn it over to Angelo to close us out. But if you do have questions, please feel free to reach out to us at fellows@avac.org. I manage that email address and we'll be happy to respond to any of your queries. Also, I've put the information packet in the chat a few times here. So please do visit our application page for all of the materials we've discussed today and for more information. I'll hand it over to you, Angelo, to close us out and just remind us on the timeline application process. Thank you.
Great. Thanks so much, Hannah and Manju, for that. You know, this page, if you can, you know, take a screenshot of it now, please do. But it's also available on the AVAC website. It's really important date, October 12th, that's the deadline. Very much encourage you, if you're intending to submit an application, not to start in the last week. The application takes time. You know, it does take time, and as someone who has been reviewing these applications from the very beginning, I can tell an application that has been written in the last 2-3 days to the deadline, and it's very unlikely that that application will be successful. So give yourself time to prepare your application, to do the necessary. You heard from one of the alumni telling you, do your due diligence to understand, prevention in your country. What are the real issues? Who are the best groups suited to align with what you need to do? That will be my take-home message for you. Get yourself, prepared for this. Talk to your hosts. Use the materials we have. Go to avac.org/fellows and go through every one of the materials there so that you get yourself familiar. You're welcome to write to us at fellows@avac.org. But before you do, take time to review the materials there, because likely the answers we give you will be in those materials. We don't stop anyone from writing to us. You're obviously welcome to write, but get yourself situated there. We look forward to receiving your materials. We're here for you. Again, if you need to know who in your country is a former fellow, a current fellow, all of that is available on the website. Alumni and fellows will not help you to write your application, but they will be supportive in giving you some ideas of things that could work or might not work. And also lastly, there are information sessions in many countries that are happening. If you want to know more about that for your country, reach out to us again at fellows@avac.org, and we will link you up with where these are gonna happen. Thank you for your time, for your engagement. Take great care of yourselves. Be safe, be well. Bye-bye.